Sound like we're ready to go here. Okay. Call the meeting to order and welcome everyone here this evening. First item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't remember who I asked last time. Glenn, you want to lead us? Sure. Okay, thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is approval of the agenda. There's a couple of minor changes. If you go to public hearing, we're going to swap A and B. B will be first and A second. And then under old business, under conditional zoning, that ordinance is 2021-75. And under Pony Road Planning Development, that ordinance is 2021-76. And that's all that I have, unless somebody else has something. And if you don't, I'm looking at motion.
I move we adopt the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor? And thank you. Public comment period. Did we have anyone sign up?
We did not.
Okay, no one signed up to speak. Next item is the consent agenda.
I make a motion we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, the next item is the fiscal year 2022 budget public hearing. Joe?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Tonight we come before you to present the budget as is statutorily required. As part of the budget process, you will hold a public hearing tonight. As far as what I'll intend to cover as far as my portion of the presentation, I'll recap the budget message. That was another statutory requirement that the budget officer or the town manager is the one who provides an overview of the budget. The budget ordinance that was presented to you went through 3 work sessions unchanged, and so I'll provide a recap for this audience just to remind everyone what was included. And then we'll also give an overview, a review of the budget schedule and process. So starting off, the goals and features within the budget message all dial back to Zebulon's Vision 2030 strategic plan. And the reason for that is the budget is not an annual right of balancing debits and credits. There are some communities that do that. There are also communities that don't have a strategic plan and vision. You do. So the budget message is an implementation or a financial tool to move forward on the goals that you've identified in your vision statement or strategic plan. That vision is a recognition, so again, as a reminder, this was a year-long process with community feedback. The vision recognized by the citizens was that Zebulon was a vibrant and growing community, but that it was going to maintain its small-town charm. And the town, meaning the organization's role in that, was to enhance quality of life for residents, to deliver not only excellent service, but friendly service, and to recognize that government can't do it all, that there's partners out there both in the private sector and the nonprofit sector, so we would seek and foster collaboration. The focus areas for, with that strategic plan, as well as for your budget, focused on having a vibrant downtown, to grow smart, to preserve and protect small town life. So I'll provide a brief overview of what is included within the budget that was presented to you. As far as vibrant downtown, the goals of the strategic plan are to revitalize downtown and attract people downtown. Issues preventing that is the development or redevelopment cost of property downtown and no public space for people to gather. So this budget continues the development of that public space with the second alley activation. This is a picture from the first alley activation, so the budget expands upon that and provides that L that comes behind this alley that's currently there, and runs between the Muter buildings. Farm Fresh Market, which is using the alley, the activated alley this season, will continue to fund that with the operating budget to make that market continue for another year. We will continue in our matriculation through the North Carolina Main Street program, and hopefully maybe one day have bed races downtown, as some communities have done with their Main Street program. And we will, in recognition of the development or redevelopment costs and hurdles, we have funded in the budget incentives for redevelopment of properties, as well as a continuation of the other incentive programs, such as the facade grant program. When it comes to growing smart, recognize that land use and transportation plans have to be coordinated. If a transportation network is not in place, it not only stifles further land use development, but it becomes more costly as well. Recognizing that we are a growing town, we'll have to grow our staff as well, and that we will continue to seek out economic development partners. Once again, knowing that we can't all do it ourselves, but there are those in the nonprofit and private sector that can assist us. The issues are we're already growing, and we're getting older as well. So within this budget, there is funding to support the continued design and construction funding for traffic signals as well as road widenings. So this is a picture of one of those farm-to-market roads. This is what's in your transportation plan to show not only wider roads with more lanes, but roads that support multimodal means of transportation. So not only vehicles, but walking and bicycles as well. We have quite an extensive amount of infrastructure that a lot of people don't recognize. A lot of that is stormwater infrastructure, and it is, in many cases, 100 years old. That's showing signs of decay. We are seeing signs of that when those pipes break down. So this budget funds an extensive amount of catching up to address some of the stormwater issues that we're seeing. As far as building and property maintenance, this building being a prime example, we took it over and rehabilitated it over 10 years ago, as well as with the public safety building next door. A lot of the mechanical equipment like the HVAC needs to be upgraded, and so this budget funds reinvestment in those public buildings and public properties. And then staffing that we talked about, there was specifically there was funding for additional firefighter and police officer. That's short of what our needs are, but we had a dramatic readjustment with the COVID revenues, and so this year we had to modify what our requests were. So that's why you saw some requested personnel requests that were not moved forward as recommended. And then the last focus area is on small town life, recognizing that we want to increase walkability and increase connections where people can connect to different parts of town or retail areas. We have gaps, particularly in our sidewalk network, and we have gaps with many people moving into a community and not necessarily having means to get to know their neighbor readily. So this budget, the features associated with Vibrant Downtown, they are means for you to get your new neighbors and the new citizens within Zebulon connected to each other. Example of that being the very popular tree lighting ceremony that we had to skip this past year, but drew over 4,000 people the year before. We will continue your sidewalk connections that you've identified. So just as a reminder, year one, you connected Zebulon Middle School with the Boys and Girls Club. The year after that, you funded the Beaver Dam Greenway connection to connect Tarrant Lakes, Tarrant Meadows, Weaver's Pond, and the soon-to-be-developed Watson Track with Wakeland Elementary and Wakeland School. And then you started to focus on downtown about connecting neighborhoods to downtown. So you extended the South Arundel sidewalk to connect to the south part of town. This past year, you completed the North Arundel sidewalk to connect downtown to Lee Street, and then make a back door to the east the Triangle East Shopping Center. This budget includes connecting to the western residential development west of downtown. So this is the West Sycamore Sidewalk. West Sycamore Sidewalk is also part of the Spine Greenway that connects Little River Park with Mudcat Stadium. And so this will be your downtown connection for that greenway. Parks and Rec Master Plan, you will review the Parks and Rec Master Plan at your August work session, but we've identified some low-hanging fruit that you can pursue, and that's included in the funding for this fiscal year. We've also identified blocking out a certain amount of funds so that if after that August work session you want to move on something quicker, you will have had funds identified that you can use those funds for a particular project that you're most interested in. There's an example of a schematic of Little River Park that's listed in your Parks and Rec Master Plan right now. And then community engagement, we will continue to fund outreach programs. As an example, the Litter Sweep program has become very popular, and it's been a way to engage the community. At the end, the goals of small town life is that this is a place where everyone wants to call home, so we're finding ways to get people connected and where they can walk around and be neighbors with each other. So you had your budget message presented to you at the beginning of May, and then you proceeded to have 3 work sessions. Your first work session was on May 11th. The work sessions, by the way, are not statutorily required, but they're provided to provide more detail to the board as they consider the budget that's placed before them. So one of the topics was on community and economic development, so staff provided details behind what was included in the budget related to community and economic development. We also provided details of going into the second year of your 3-year matriculation into the North Carolina Main Street program, also known as the Downtown Associate Community program. You're a Downtown Associate until you're a full-fledged member, so this is funding for the second year of that. The storm drain maintenance and repairs that I mentioned earlier, and as with every work session, we provided an opportunity for the public to provide input on the budget that was presented. This is also an opportunity for the Board of Commissioners and the mayor to ask any questions, even provide comments if they wanted to steer the budget ordinance in a different direction. May 19th was the second budget work session. Walk Zebulon is the overarching program where we look about connections throughout town. The specific project that was recommended was the West Sycamore project that I alluded to earlier. Property management was that discussion about this aging buildings and properties and the amount of money that we need to reinvest to keep the maintenance up on those buildings and properties. We again provided an opportunity for public input, and then we provided a follow-up, which was anything that came up from the first work session. We circled back and provided information to the board at this second work session. And then, once again, an opportunity for questions and comments. And then the third work session was held May 27th. We shared with you some early results from the market study. Those were the salaries that we talked about and focused primarily on fire. You'll see subsequent presentations, the next one being at your August work session. That was not included in your budget ordinance, but this could be something that you fund mid-year, so we wanted to get you some information on that. We shared with you information about where we are on not only signals and roadway widenings, but also maintaining the roads we've got, the street paving. And so you saw the progress that we're making with having dedicated funds to go towards the maintenance, and because of that, the maintenance costs of that are going down, and we're starting to fill that hole that was draining money from us a few years back. You heard a presentation from Parks and Recreation, primarily focused on the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, a discussion about that low-hanging fruit that was listed to fund in this budget, as well as those sequestered funds that you can utilize when you move forward on adopting the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Again, a period for public input, again, a period for follow-up, and period for any questions and comments. So tonight, June 7th, the budget ordinance is presented to you. The public hearing represents the last of your statutory requirements to complete before you consider adopting a budget. As far as adopting the budget, you can do that tonight, having completed the public hearing. You can adopt it later, just as long as it's not later than July 1st. I put that in quotes because that's a statutory requirement. So with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'll open the podium up for any public comment.
All right, thank you, Joe. We had one person sign up to speak tonight, our former town manager, Donald Horton. Don?
I am Donald Horton. I reside at 618 Stratford Drive here in Zebulon. It's good to be back. I've been watching all of your meetings on the computer, but it's not the same as seeing the smiling faces, and I appreciate being able to be back here tonight. Having served as the assistant and town manager for 14 years, I know very well the difficulty in developing a balanced budget that will best serve the citizens of Zebulon while dealing with a limited amount of funds. Having also served as 6 years as a special assistant to State Treasurer Harlan Boyles and assistant local government commission secretary, the agency that has authority over all local government fiscal matters, I've never before seen a proposed budget document that exceeded the one presented to you by Town Manager Joe Moore. We're truly blessed to have him administratively leading our town. I commend all of the staff and elected officials for the tremendous time you have spent gathering information necessary to determine what must be funded, what are our greatest needs, and what we would like to have. Once those things were determined, the difficult process begins as you immediately recognize that there's not going to be enough funds to do all the things you would like to do. Town Manager Joe Moore has done an outstanding job orchestrating his management team as they did all their best to evaluate all the requests and provide the board with a fair and equitable proposed budget. The backup material included in the budget document more than adequately supports the reasoning for the funding in the proposed budget. I will conclude my remarks with some of the same words I shared with you by hard copy last year due to COVID restrictions. After reviewing the entire 630-page proposed budget document and watching all of your work sessions, it is obvious, as usual, that some funds requested are not included in the recommended budget. In compliance with the North Carolina General Statutes, it was necessary that Town Manager Moore mesh the request with the available funds and present you a balanced budget. Town Manager Moore is to be commended for being able to bring the parties making the request together and involve them in determining the final proposed budget. Based on my thorough review of the information provided, I wholeheartedly recommend that the Board of Commissioners adopt the proposed 2022 budget as presented. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. Okay. Don was the only one that signed up to speak on the budget tonight, so I will close the public hearing, and this comes up later in our agenda. Next is the special use permit application for Iglesia Christiana, I hope I get this right, Renaissance Church building. This is a quasi-judicial type hearing, so I need to go through a few issues with you. It is, again, quasi-judicial. It's run very much like a court of law. Y'all can consider me the judge and yourselves the jury. We take testimony, not just random getting up and speaking, but I don't like that. You have to have evidence to be presented by testimony for you to consider it in rendering your decision. I do want to ask if any of you have any conflicts of interest, have had any ex parte communication on this matter, or any personal interest in the matter, and if so, please let me know by raising your hand. Okay. So, that being said, I will also add that anyone wishing to speak must come up and be sworn in or affirmed. And again, your testimony is evidentiary in nature. So having said that, long-winded, I will say that the public hearing is now open, and I'll ask for a staff report.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name and address, please.
Mead Bradshaw, 1003 North Randall Avenue, Zebulon, North Carolina, 27597. Special use permit before you, 2021-2. It's Iglesia Cristiana Reancer Church. It's the applicant's the site group. The property address is 0 Old Bun Road. It's just under 5 acres in size. And the current zoning on the property is residential 2. The request before you today is the construction of about a 16,000 square foot religious institution in a residential zoning district. These are the 6 findings of fact later on tonight that you'll use to evaluate the proposal. This is the use chart in the Unified Development Ordinance. As you can see, the religious institution matches up with residential 2, requires a special use permit. And then in addition to that, there are some use-specific standards that because of the nature of the use, more additional restrictions or more restricted standards in the UDO will apply. And what these restrictions are these 2 standards. The first one, because it's not exceeding 500 seats, will not apply. The total amount of seats in this religious institution is about 260. And then the number 2 is that a type A buffer is required along any property lines adjacent with a single-family residential use. Subject site's located along Old Bun Road. You have some single-family residential uses to the adjacent west. You have the US 264 ramp to the south. You have single-family residences to the adjacent east. And then you have a single-family subdivision, the Autumn Lakes subdivision across Old Bun Road to the north. Zoning, you have the SUD R13 across Old Bun Road, and then to the east, south, and west is residential 2. And then across US 264, there is office and institutional uses. This is a posted sign on Old Bun Road looking east. This is looking west on Old Bun Road. This is the subject property currently vacant. This is looking across the street to the Autumn Lake subdivision. And these are the single-family residences to the adjacent west. And this is a single-family residence to the east. It's a site plan submitted by the applicant. As I stated before, it's about 16,000 square foot. A religious institution. Based on the size of the facility, about 70 parking spaces are required. The plans are showing about 130. 2 entrances on Old Bun Road. The applicant is aware that in the future, when it comes in for development, they will be required for road improvements and the dedication of right-of-way. Stormwater facility is towards the rear of the property. And then along the east and then west portions of the site are the type A buffer that use-specific standard required. These are elevations. This is the front elevation, which would be facing Old Bun Road. And this is the west elevation. The materials being used are metal siding, and then the darker shade is brick. The east elevation is the lower elevation, and then The south elevation is the top elevation. The recommendation is staff finds that this meets all of the required findings of fact, and that the Board of Commissioners accept the presentation of evidence and testimony as submitted today for consideration at tonight's, the June 7th, 2021 meeting. As I stated before, these are the findings of fact. The options available to the Board of Commissioners tonight are you can approve as submitted, approve as amended, subject to the applicant's agreement, close the hearing and postpone, which no additional information or testimony will be allowed later. Keep the hearing open and postpone. This would allow more additional information and testimony, or to deny the request. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Questions?
Yes. So in regards to the metal siding, can you help me understand why staff feels like that meets the harmony aspect of where it's going to be located, considering that those other subdivisions will be required to use different materials in their building?
Mm-hmm. Well, metal siding, it's allowed by the Unified Development Ordinance, and staff work with the applicant to actually provide this brick siding along the entire length of both the east and the west sides of the property. We felt that compromise was something that was more in keeping with the residential features in the Autumn Lakes subdivision across the street and some of the additional properties. But that's how staff felt, as long as they extended the brick siding along the east and the west, which wasn't offered up initially.
In the front of the building, that darker area is brick?
Correct.
Okay.
Other questions? All right, thank you, Mitch. Okay, I'll call anyone wanting to present evidence in favor of the application. Okay. Anyone wishing to present evidence in opposition to the application? It's a lively crowd tonight. Okay. Finally, anyone that just wants to present information, not necessarily for or against, but have some question. Okay. I'll ask the board before I close the public hearing, do you feel that you have sufficient information to make a decision? Anyone that feels they do not have sufficient information? Because once I close the public hearing, there's no additional information. Okay, I will then close the public hearing, and the matter is actually next on our agenda under old business, special use permit application, the Glacier. I hope I'm saying that right. I hate to be offensive, so, but, all right, Mead, this floor is yours again. You have anything else?
No, sir.
No, okay. All right, well, then, are there any other questions or comments? I mean, any other comments with regards to this application? Okay. Hearing none, I'll ask if there is a motion.
I hereby move to approve special use permit 2021-02 for approval of the proposed special use permit for a religious institution at 0 Old Bun Road, as it meets all the findings of facts in accordance with the Unified Development Ordinance 2.2.18.f.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Other comments or questions or discussion? All in favor? And the motion carries. Thank you. Okay, the next is conditional zoning Nedriga, we can get some easy names here, Bungalow Court. Pete?
All right, this was a conditional rezoning that was heard at the May joint public hearing. The applicant is Capital Partners in North Carolina. Property address is 901 MacTodd Road. Size of the parcel is 2.36 acres. Existing zoning is light industrial. Proposed zoning is residential 4. This was, as I stated before, located on MacTodd Road, just it's south of the intersection with West Gannon. You have the Heritage Church to the adjacent north. You have some industrial warehouses across MacTodd Road. Zoning to the north is light industrial. The zoning to the east is mobile home overlay and light industrial. To the west across MacTodd Road is heavy commercial, and then to the south is heavy commercial and mobile home overlay. This is the posted sign on MacTodd Road looking south. This is the undeveloped subject site. This is the industrial warehouse across MacTodd Road. And this is the annex to the Heritage Church to the adjacent north. It's the site plan or the concept plan submitted by the applicant. Bungalow court style, detached homes, 7 lots, 2 access points, about half an acre of open space running along the eastern side. The conditions that the applicant is proposing is the front setback reduction from 20 feet to 15 feet, and then a rear setback reduction from 15 feet to 5 feet. And then just that a covenant is recorded that each shared driveway will be in common area maintained by the homeowners association. The bungalow court, the P in the use table states it's permitted use. And then these are the 5 development ordinance standards that you would use to evaluate the request. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, question? Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion?
Motion we adopt the ordinance 2021-75,
That's correct.
amendment
Yes, sir.
to the conditional zoning map. I can't pronounce that either.
Nedriga, I think.
Nedriga Bungalow Court to R4C.
Okay, you want to read the rest of the motion? Finding that the proposed request is, do you have that? Here, Glenn.
Finding that the proposed request is consistent with the conditions of section 2.2.6.H of the UDO, the Vision 2030 strategic plan, and other applicable plans adopted by the town of Zebulon.
Okay, it's good. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. Other comments or questions, discussion? All in favor? And the motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, planning development, Pony Road.
Pony Road plan development. This first slide is just the definition of what our unified developments states that plan development is supposed to be. It is the intent of these standards to allow an applicant to propose a wide variety of allowable uses and the flexible application of some of the development standards in Article 5 development standards in return for a higher quality of development with more amenities than might otherwise result from the strict application of the standards of this ordinance. The applicant is TMTLA Associates. The owner is PNC of North Carolina and the Chandak family. The property addresses are 705 Pony Road, 0 MacTodd Road, and 0 Harmonica Drive, the size of the parcel, cumulative in size of 3 parcels is 163 acres. Zoning is residential 2, residential 4, and heavy commercial. And the proposed zoning is planned development. The development is proposing 418 dwelling units. They will be single-family detached and single-family attached homes. The density on the property is 2.5 units an acre, and then the minimum lot size of the single-family detached lots is 5,000 square feet. This is the vicinity map. You have Pony Road located right here, south of Gannon. You have the Pine View Estate subdivision to the north. As I stated, there's the 163 acres is 3 different zoning districts. To the north, you have residential multifamily, and then you have office and institutional. To the east, across Pony Road, you have heavy commercial. To the west, you have offices and institutional, then residential 4. And then to the south, you have residential 2, and then manufactured home overlay district. There are pictures, the next slides are pictures of the site visit. This is the posted sign located, or looking south on Pony Road. This is looking north on Pony Road. This is the adjacent multifamily development to the north. This is the concept plan submitted by the applicant. 2 access points on Pony Road. You'd have a minimum of 2 access points connecting into the Pine View Estate subdivision. You'd have your single-family attached homes on the northern portion of the site, and then your single-family detached homes south of that and to the east of that. And then you have open space, which a lot of it's floodplain, and then there is a greenway path that the applicant's proposing to construct. The pool and amenity area would be located more towards the front of the development. Just zooming in at the single-family detached homes. Just looking at the single-family attached. The amenities that the development is proposing is a greenway trail, a pool, an amenity center that will have a fitness center, a fire pit, and a seating area. The open space is 83 acres. It's about 50% of the site. They're proposing a dog park and a tot lot. There were some outstanding issues from the joint public hearing. There were 5 that staff identified. Staff and the applicant has worked together to come to agreement of how these will be addressed. The first one was staff really wanted to see a commitment to the residential design guidelines. The applicant's willing to agree to the residential design guidelines. The only exception that they wanted was relief from the garage doors not being at least 2 feet behind the front porch or the primary entrance of the building. Another issue is traffic calming. We agreed that we'll look at mini circles, roundabouts, and other forms of traffic calming when the development comes in for the technical review committee. Staff was concerned about the timing of the construction of the pool. The applicant agreed that it will be submitted as part of the second phase of the development. There's concerns about at the entrance that the street width's not meeting EMS requirements, and the applicant has agreed to meet the required width at those entrances for EMS. And then staff wanted to see some language in the homeowners covenants that no more than 10% of the units would be rental units, and that was agreed upon to be part of the covenants. These are the standards used to evaluate the proposal, and then that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Okay, questions or comments?
Two questions for staff. Number one, what is the criteria for phase 2? A number of units, and if so, how many?
There is no requirement for the number of units when they submit their phase. It's whenever the second phase is submitted, so that there's not an amount that we're tying them to.
So they determine when phase 2 starts?
That's correct.
Okay, and then the second one is, how do you determine if more than 10% of the dwellings are rented, and then what is the penalty?
Well, that's something that the town will have to monitor, and then it's a violation of the rezoning case. So it's a zoning violation.
Yeah, but how would we monitor that? In other words, if 3 years from now I ask you how many units are rented, how will you tell me?
Well, we have our IMAP software, which has the owner's mailing address, which would be, if it's not at that site, it'd be a different location. That's one option.
Commissioner Laux, I think I can help answer that question. On the 10% limitation, if the restrictive covenants are properly drafted, it will not only set the 10% maximum, but it'll have an application requirement that the individual residents would have to file with their homeowners association to get approval for renting units. And the homeowners association would have to keep a record of the number of units that are in rental condition. So it's a self-policing process that, if the Declaration of Covenants is properly drafted, would put the burden on the homeowners association to monitor, to regulate, and to provide consent and approval for anybody that wanted to have it. Now, you can imagine that with any kind of self-regulation, it could be abused, but it should be the incentive of the homeowners association to make sure that those provisions aren't violated. As in many self-policing situations, it'll require the residents of the neighborhood to submit complaints to their HOA. If it goes for any period of time, or if it becomes particularly egregious in the violation, then the town could step in, as Meade suggests, and send out notice of violations to force the HOA to do their duty. So my recommendation would be to have the town review the covenants to make sure that a proper system is in place to enforce the 10% rental restriction.
Eric, may I ask a question of you? Would normally those, when it comes to those violations, would that be then, it would be sent to the homeowners association and the homeowners association as a whole would pay it, or would it be the individual, the person that tipped the scales over the 10%?
Yeah, that depends too on how the Declaration of Covenants is drafted. It seems to make more sense to have the enforcement mechanism with the homeowners association as opposed to the individual residents, because there could be dozens in violation, right?
Right, okay.
And so from a point of view of the town's efficiency of enforcing, I would suggest that the violation would be the HOA.
Okay.
Is that currently a condition that the town gets to review the covenants?
Well,
We need to put that in any approval.
Yeah. Meade looks like he's ready to answer that.
Okay.
Right, so when they submit their plat for recording, we won't sign the plat or approve those lots for recording until staff looks at the homeowners association document.
Okay, so that is reviewed by the planning department?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I wanted to be sure it wasn't like a technical review committee or something of that nature.
It would be the planning department.
Okay, all right, thank you. Other questions or concerns?
The 10%, is that something in our ordinance that we must have at least 10%?
It's not in our ordinance, no.
Okay, because could we have less?
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem. It's an early night, can't even talk yet. The 10% is actually more of an industry standard. There are several other communities within Wake County that have the 10% benchmark. Ultimately, if you are to deviate from that 10%, it would require an agreement with the applicants as well. The applicants have agreed that no more than 10% of dwellings with the certificate of occupancy would be available for rental, and that way it helps to balance it out as opposed to the first 100 being rental and none of them being owner-occupied. But that number is not locked in stone, but it is a kind of a standard with several other larger developments within Wake County.
But another way to say that is you can't go back and make it retroactive to other developments.
That is correct. You cannot.
All right, other questions?
I did go out and visit that site last Friday with Michael. I was a little concerned about the clear cutting of all that land with all the trees and everything. Also, the environmental studies and, the stormwater runoff, about how it would affect the wetlands that are already there. Would it cause any more additional flooding? And also the traffic issue, I didn't see where it took in, where Mac Todd, where Pony Road comes into Mac Todd, how they were going to take care of that intersection.
Yeah, me, this isn't a public hearing.
Oh, I didn't know if the applicant wanted to respond to it.
I understand. I want to hear what you have to say first.
Well, in regards to the Matt Todd Road,
If I recall from the traffic study, I think there's just the addition of turn lanes
So,
on Mac Todd.
yeah, I'm looking at the TIA. I mean, the traffic engineer's here. Do you want the traffic engineer to speak on that?
Yes, you can bring her up. Sure. Oh, sorry. What I don't want to do is turn this into a second public hearing that was not advertised. Correct.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Edward Sergani. I did the traffic impact analysis that was a joint three-way agreement between the town, the state, and the applicant. And when you pick out the intersections to study at the beginning, it depends on a lot of where you see the traffic volumes coming from. And in this case, we had an agreement to study the intersections mainly along NC 97 and not Mac Todd Road intersection with Pony Road. The volumes where we're projecting the new trips to come from were very low at that intersection, and it's not really going to add a whole lot to it. That doesn't mean that there's not anything bad or good with it the way it is. It just wasn't studied as part of the traffic study due to the low volumes.
Thank you.
I'm currently hearing a lot of discussion from the commissioners, and so I'm ready to make a motion if anyone else
Well, let's
is ready.
see if anybody else has any questions, okay? Are there any other questions? Yes, Larry.
A comment and a question both. I think the plan and the development looks very nice, and the traffic study was very well done. And while I don't have credentials in traffic study, I do live in the subdivision directly across in Wedgwood and have been through that intersection for 38 years, and it has progressively got worse year after year. There's currently no turn arrows on Pony Road, which, excuse the expression, creates a Chinese fire drill county fair demolition derby on some mornings. And I've almost been taken out about 50 times in 38 years because of people going through the intersection in the turn lane as opposed to following the line. So one of my comments would be, if the development proceeds, we consider a condition where a roundabout be completed at 97 and Pony Road. I'm guessing within 25% of the permits, or maybe 108, 105 units, thereabouts, before that roundabout be completed. Otherwise, I'm afraid that's going to be a real choke point. And like I said, I don't have credentials, but I have 38 years of going through that intersection.
Is it something that you'd feel comfortable with addressing when the plans come in to the first phase of TRC?
And we can take a look at it then, or make it a condition of the development.
I'd feel comfortable doing that.
What?
I'd feel comfortable doing that.
Okay, I want to be clear. You feel comfortable with TRC, or you feel comfortable making it?
With the 25% build out.
25%.
Yeah, and that's just a starting point as a comment.
Okay. I understand. I just want to be clear.
Do we want to be specific with roundabout or just look at some sort of intersection improvement?
I would say roundabout.
Other questions or comments?
And that's at Pony and West Gannon?
Correct.
I had another question. Our first response time to that side, to the area.
Should be right around 4 minutes, I believe, is that? Let me see if we can
Is
get
it 4 minutes to
information
Pine
from
View?
I'm not aware of what the response time is, but I think it's right around 4
Well, the
minutes.
reason I ask that is it's a little bit quicker even to there than it is to Pine View subdivision.
So the requirement is about 4.5 minutes, and then they can get there in 5 to 6 minutes.
Okay. And that's the other standard as well. Is that right? Pine View is the same? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. Does that answer your question, Glenn? Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, Shannon?
I recommend tabling ordinance 2021-76 for the proposed Pony Road planning development for further discussion at a work session to be convened later this month.
Okay, the motion is to defer the decision on this to a future date.
Second.
Okay, made and second. Other comments or discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Okay. We'll put it on a future agenda and let you know when it is. Okay. Okay, now we're Zebulon National Historic District. Before we get into that, I would like to recognize some guests we have, and I'm sorry I can't go down the list and call all the names, but we do have some members of the Wake County Historic Preservation Commission that we contract with to represent us on historic matters. If y'all would just hold your hand up, I appreciate you coming down. I just wanted to recognize the time to come to the meeting, and we very much appreciate it. And we appreciate the consideration that you've given on this matter along with us. So thank you very much. Sure. Okay.
Once again, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Tonight is the next step regarding the Zebulon National Historic District proposal. As you may recall from several meetings, this all started in 2018 when the Wake County Historic Preservation Commission received a grant. That was a grant from the State Historic Preservation Office and a couple others to do a survey of historic properties within this section of Wake County. Zebulon was one of the last communities to be reviewed, and from that, additional interest in the establishment of a historic district proceeded. At the 2019 Zebulon Board of Commissioners annual retreat, the State Historic Preservation Office was there to do a presentation. And one of the items in the presentation noted that prior to the National Register Advisory Committee, which is the group from the State Historic Preservation Office that would review applications, the nomination will be one, sent to the elected official, and two, to the Wake County Historic Preservation Commission. These entities will have up to 60 days to offer an opinion whether or not the district as nominated meets the criteria for listing. Unfortunately, those things didn't happen. Additionally, other steps throughout the process in terms of including the town, Wake County Historic Preservation, as well as many of the citizens within the town of Zebulon, unfortunately did not occur. Therefore, we have this draft of the map that was created by consultants hired by Preservation Zebulon that does encapsulate a pretty significant portion of town. These are the proposed boundaries within that application. As I noted, it was submitted by Preservation Zebulon, and the period of significance within this document ranges from 1906 to 1971. That is a very, very broad range when it comes to a historic district, even a national historic district. It does include 239 primary resources or structures, if you will. And once again, there's no real input from neither the town or Wake County Historic Preservation. The period of significance, as defined by the National Register Bulletin, is the length of time in which when a property is associated with important events, activities, persons, or attain the characteristics which qualify it for a National Register listing. A period of significance usually begins with the date of the date of significant activities or events beginning with the property or giving the property its historic significance. This is often the date of construction. In most situations, it would be when the house was built. However, if there was an event such as visiting a sitting president visited location, that could relate to having a period of significance. So that's why going from 1906 to 1971 is very broad, because the culture, the activities, the architectural details, everything changed pretty significantly during that time period with World War I, World War II, as well as some other cultural changes and events. The criteria that the State Historic Preservation Office looks at, there's 4 options. The first is the events. Once again, a sitting president, a major labor strike, a large fire in portions of the town being preserved. Those are all characteristics of what could be fall into criteria A. And our proposed district does include some items that fit that criteria. This is also part of it that tells the story of a location. Specifically, does this proposal, as written, tell the story of Zebulon? Staff doesn't believe so. Criteria C is architecture. Once again, there's typically some cohesive binding characteristics with this architecture. Typically, houses that are constructed in a similar time period. In this situation, you have everything from Victorian, Queen Anne style, I believe there's a prairie style, up to mid-century modern, which is a very large departure from a Queen Anne or a Victorian. It also notes that the historic integrity must be provided for all periods of significance entered. In this situation, it allows for, if structures were modified, those modifieds can gain significance in their own right. When a property made substantial contribution to the district. This goes back to that criteria A. And the other standard is it must be at least 50 years old. Now let's talk a little bit about architectural differences. Once again, I think we're pretty much in agreement that this is what most people think of a historic home being in a historic district. It's 214 East Horton Street, and they're doing a wonderful renovation of this house. It's going to be amazing once it's finished, and I think this is going to really highlight some of the historic charm of that particular neighborhood. Well, we also have this street, or this house at 1911 Church Street. Completely different architectural style. The other item of note, see if the green one works, is this canopy that's on the front blocks a lot of the architectural features of the structure. One of the standards for the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation, in which historic preservation commissions use to determine whether or not modification can be made, is it going to block the visibility of these character-defining historic resources? In this situation, yes. The surprising thing is both of these structures are classified as contributing resources in the proposed district, which was very surprising to staff, because not only are these architecturally, structurally, and characteristically different There's one that has features on it which would be inconsistent with the Secretary of Interior guidelines. There's also things that have been excluded from the district. Whitley Galleries, wonderful building in downtown, which hasn't really changed significantly. But a lot of the modifications have made can still be reversed. The windows, they've been painted to look like operational windows, but the openings are still there. The corner entry door, it's been boarded up, but that corner entry opening is still there. Same goes for a lot of the windows and other character-defining features. However, because this was going to be classified as a non-contributing resource because of some of the modifications, it was excluded from the district where the structure across the street was included. On the flip side, this was included. This is the Zebulon Swim Association pool. It's in disrepair. It is somewhat representative of mid-century modern in terms of the pool building, but it's something that would take substantial effort and financial resources to restore, and which, if it is included in a National Historic District, if federal funds were used, it would have to meet those requirements. So why is all this important? Well, those federal funds would have to go through a 106 review, which says that you can't use federal funds to negatively impact a historic resource. So in this situation, if the not-for-profit organizations, Zebulon Swim Association, wanted to seek funding from the federal government, they would not be able to use those funds unless they were doing a full restoration of the pool. So something like a splash pad, which the community has indicated that they would like as part of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, would not be an eligible possibility if that funding source is pursued. Also, the use of municipal federal funds. This includes community development block grant funds, the federal highway funds, which come through CAMPO, American Rescue Plan, as well as FEMA reimbursement. Each of these would require a 106 review for any of the resources within the National Historic District. And of course, there's other federal grant programs, especially as government is constantly adapting and changing. There could be other resources available in the future that we're not taking in consideration right now. Staff did an analysis of the proposed map, and I should note that this is not a recommendation, but it's an analysis of the district as it's presented. We did go out a couple hundred feet from the proposed district to determine whether or not there's other structures of a similar time period, but this is strictly based on the date of construction of the dwelling units or the other structures. And you'll notice specifically just north of North Street, there's a clear delineation between structure construction date that corresponds with approximately World War II. Not only are the architectural styles between those two areas different, it's also the character of the lot development is different. You have larger lots, wider lots that accommodate mid-century modern homes, whereas the more Victorian and early 1900 style structures were constructed south of that line. The other thing that needs to be pointed out is you do have some very early homes that are stretching out in some of these other streets, and unfortunately this doesn't extend all the way down to Barbie Street. But not only do those houses have the age characteristics that would make them eligible, it's also some of the story of Zebulon. This did not look at those locations, unfortunately. So other considerations that were discussed earlier in the process is demolition disincentive. Once again, that's based on a project or a program that they have over in Apex, where they receive special legislation as well as a local ordinance that was passed in order to put a prohibition on development of structures within their historic district or anything on a register or on a survey list for 48 months. That is not what the Federal Historic District is proposing. We do have several landmark buildings, including the one that we're all in tonight, that is on a federal landmark. We also have several county landmarks. Those go through a different review. We do still have to do the 106 review on this building when it comes to the use of federal funds, but additionally, we have to go through Wake County Historic Preservation when we make modifications to the exterior of this building to make sure that it's in keeping with the Secretary of Interior guidelines. The other option is exploring a local historic district. We do have a section, our Unified Development Ordinance reserved in the future if we do decide to pursue that. The Planning Board did take this up for discussion at the May 17th meeting and voted 6-1 to recommend that the Board of Commissioners recommend that the proposed National Historic District be tabled to allow further modifications of the proposed boundaries and full public involvement, not only the town, but also Wake County Historic Preservation and the community as a whole. It is worth knowing the one person who did not vote for it during his testimony or during his comments indicated that he was very upset with the proposed district and some of the information that's been relayed regarding the district. I reached out to him and he indicated that he would have preferred to see it denied. The Wake County Historic Preservation Commission also took this up at their meeting and prepared a letter dated May 25th, 2021. And for this, I'm going to have Jeff Hastings come up and provide a summary. Jeff is the assistant chairperson for the Wake County Historic Preservation Commission. He was also the chairperson for the subcommittee that drafted this letter.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Jeff Hastings, Vice Chair of the Wake County Historic Commission, also President of the Apex Historical Society, and was asked to chair the committee to look at this. The long and the short of it is, I agree exactly with what he said. I live in Apex. We have a downtown historic district, and it's been added to 3 times. There were a lot of things that were said at the meeting by SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, and some of the people that were hired by Preservation Committee here in Zebulon about things like not crossing railroad tracks. Well, I'm sorry, it's an Apex. You know, we cross railroad tracks. It's done in Wake Forest. Many communities. There was a lot of just underlying currents that I agree that I would love for Zebulon to have a historic district. I've seen what it's done for my town. I've seen what it's done for Raleigh. I think it would be a great thing. But I think it has to be all-inclusive. I don't think that you can take one segment of the population and have a historic district for that segment of the population. I think that it does need to be something that comes to this council. It needs to come to the Wake County Historic Commission. And I think everyone has agreed that all of the parties are interested in helping. And all of us are willing to come to the table and do what needs to be done for the best of Zebulon. So when we met, a lot of the things that were sort of hashed out was reiteration of what we heard at your meeting, I think in May. And it was just, you look at the African American community, and I had already looked at some of the houses there and some of the dates there. And that was one of my questions, was why is this not, why is Whitley Galleries not done? And unfortunately, we didn't have the opportunity to review any of the documentation prior to that because we weren't given that documentation. So we would love, as a historic commission, we would love to be a part of this and help. We just don't think that as it's put forth is the best manner for Zebulon to move forward.
All right, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'm available if you have any questions.
Okay. Question? There is a resolution 2021-10 that's up for your consideration. And upon adoption of that, I would put a cover letter on it and we would send it to the State Historic Preservation Office so that it would be presented later this week to the commission. So I guess what I'm asking is, what's your pleasure?
I recommend denial of Resolution 2021-10. Do I need to modify this as I go through, or is that enough?
Why are you denying it?
Oh,
The
to deny
resolution.
it. So I recommend approval because we want to deny it. I'm so sorry.
I'm
so sorry.
Let me get my dog.
I scared myself for a minute. Apologies,
Okay,
Zebulon.
Shannon, there is
Apologies.
a
Let me
sample-
try this
there is a
again.
sample motion.
Let me try this again,
There's a
folks.
sample motion in your packet, Shannon.
What does she want? She doesn't even know. All right. Again, I recommend approval of the resolution 2021-10 to recommend that the State Historic Preservation Office's National Register Advisory Committee deny the proposed National Historic District as presented, finding that the proposed plan is not consistent with the goals and objectives of the Vision 2030 strategic plan and other applicable plans as approved by the town of Zebulon.
Thank you.
And I'll second that.
You're the second, okay. Other comments or questions? I'll not deny you the right to ask it.
With this approval of the resolution, so we're denying this and kind of kicking it back, do we have any idea how long it would take to redo this with public input, redraw the districts, et cetera, and expense?
A lot of it's going to be dependent upon the willingness and cooperation of the other parties that are involved. Fortunately, a lot of the material that was already provided by the consultant, as well as the studies and some of the information and documentation that Wake County Historic Preservation have, as well as other preservation groups, realistically, it might put a 6 to 12 month delay on it. But what will happen next is if the board approves the resolution tonight, it'll go to the National Register Historic or Advisory Committee, which meets this Thursday. Ultimately, they have the discretion to approve and move this forward to the National Park Service or to take other actions. If it gets moved forward, we're still reviewing what our options are at that time. But if it does get denied, realistically, the timeline is going to be dependent upon how quickly we can all come together to really explore the options, the historic integrity of these structures, the story, the culture, the history, to make sure that really meets criteria A as well as criteria C.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Well, I'd just like to apologize once again. Sorry, everybody.
No problem. Okay, I sense you're ready to vote. Everybody, all in favor, please raise your hand. And the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. All righty. Comprehensive land use plan.
Okay, this is wrapping up part of a very long process. Tonight is only discussion on the land use plan side of it. The transportation plan is still in review with the planning board, and we anticipate coming before you in either August or September with that plan, depending upon some of the intricacies and details that we need to work out. But the comprehensive land use plan, we sent out an RFP approximately 2 years ago and hired a team of Remy Kemp and Associates to do the transportation side and Kendig Keys to do the land use side. The proposed plan tonight is in conformance with 160D-501, which requires a plan that is current to be used as the foundational guidance document for land use decisions within the state of North Carolina. It is the blueprint for future development. Whenever comparing these, I like to use the example that the comprehensive land use plan is the blueprint to build the house, and the Unified Development Ordinance and other regulations. That's the hammer, the nails, the very expensive lumber that is used to construct the house. Obviously, when you get out on the field, there's always field adjustments, but nobody begins construction until they know what the blue plan looks like. It is a guidance document. This does provide information, and it will be modified over time as development pressures change. It is not a regulatory document. These items are to assist the staff, the Board of Commissioners, as well as the Planning Board in making land use decisions. But it is also the foundation for all the regulations moving forward. If approved tonight, all future actions, you'll see this plan reference, and not only the plan in general, but specific sections of this plan reference including the future land use map and specific policy statements and guidances to help make these decisions. There was extensive public input throughout the entire process. This is now the 5th town board session that was involved. There was a town hall meeting held in early 2021, which is pre-COVID. It seems like forever ago, but there's a photo of that meeting. Several of you were in attendance, and we intended to have 3 of these town hall style meetings or day in the district. Unfortunately, COVID sidetracked the plans. But working with a great consultant, we did establish an online survey, which we had pretty good response, not statistically significant, but pretty good response. We had visual preference surveys, which incorporated a lot of social media posts that provided alternate photos to get feedback on, okay, what is the perception? What do the citizens of Zebulon want to see? We also really incorporated social media. We got a lot of feedback through Facebook on that. And then finally, we did have a primary focus group that met throughout the process, sometimes virtually, sometimes in person. Additionally, I forgot to put that on there, we did have a week-long meeting blitz, which is in what we now know as the alley activation space, the week before demolition began. We had a tremendous turnout with that. We had something like 14 meetings throughout the week. All of you were in attendance to at least one of those meetings, as well as many of the planning board members, so we definitely appreciate your involvement and your input throughout those activities. The sections broken into an introduction of why this plan is important, land use and development, growth capacity, housing and neighborhoods, economic development, which includes the tremendous graphics that were prepared about the future possibility of the 5-county stadium area, as well as recreation amenities. These are a little light compared to a lot of other plans, but that's because we're in the process of going through a Parks and Recreation master plan, and we're trying not to step on the toes of that plan. And finally, implementation. These are the actual action items that can be taken to incorporate or make this plan work. Finally, there is a Zebulon Today appendix, which gives a snapshot of where we're at so we can get a better direction of where we need to go in the future. The guiding principles that really guide this document is that Zebulon be connected, grounded, and balanced. Prudent, collaborative, as well as resilient. Each of these are words that were mentioned during all these public input. And we looked at, okay, how do they apply to land use decisions? And all of those are spelled out in the plan as well. The heart of pretty much anything in the planning office is some sort of a map, whether it's a site plan or something like this, which is our future land use map. This future land use map not only corresponds with where we're at today in terms of our unified development zoning, but also where we need to go. And some areas to really point out is the areas north of town. These lines, you can see a little bit better in this picture here, these lines actually correspond to the Plan Wake master plan, which was recently adopted, to make sure that we're working collaboratively with our regional neighbors. Additionally, the area around 5-county stadium that I mentioned really revisions this area to not just be a stadium out in the fringes of downtown, but a destination center to help bring people into the community from not only East Wake County, but the region as a whole. This provides additional opportunities for them to do more than just catch a baseball game. And even a place where the opposing team can stay when they're visiting and possibly look down into the stadium from across the street. It really helps also to focus on the infill development located around the core of our downtown. The implementation, which is the newest section, really goes into the administration action items, what the process is to amend this. State statute changed a couple of years back that when a plan comes or a development proposal comes before you that is inconsistent with the comprehensive land use plan, it doesn't necessarily put a stop on it. But the plan amendment process works with North Carolina general statute to allow for these plans to be amended based on changing demographics, changing cultural situations, changing economic times. It also has an encouraging outreach component. As everybody can realize, Zebulon is not stagnant. Right now, we're growing at record capacity, and we need to make sure that we continue to stay engaged with our business communities as well as our citizens. And the administration section goes into what each of the different responsibilities are, and a lot of them fall on town management and staff. And the action plan is broken into 3 groups. The short-term section is the stuff that's very tangible that we could do in approximately 1 year. The mid-range is 2 to 4 years. These are things that are a little bit further out. These are typically things that we're going to have to request additional funding for, such as the continuation of additional plans. And the long-term items, these are going to be more of your capital projects, things that we're going to have to think about for a couple years to really figure out, okay, how are we going to make these work? It also works into when these plans need to be updated as well. And that concludes my presentation for tonight. I'm available. Additionally, we have Gary Mitchell, who is our consultant from Kangdig Keast, available as well.
Question? Okay. What's your pleasure?
I hereby recommend approval of ordinance 2021-73 to approve the comprehensive land use plan, finding that the proposed plan is consistent with the goals and objectives of the Vision 2030 strategic plan and other applicable plans as approved by the town of Zebulon.
Second.
Motion made, second. Other comments or questions? All in favor? All right, and the motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, now we've had the budget presented, so my question to you is, are you ready to vote on the budget, or do you feel that we need further work as a board? And if you feel we need further work as a board, we need to establish at least one more meeting, and maybe more, but for now, one. So what's your pleasure?
Make a motion that we establish another meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Beverly, I know you said you were going out of town at some point. What was your dates?
Next week, Monday through Thursday.
So 13th through the 17th. Right, okay. Okay, so if you take next week out, unless you want to do a Friday meeting, that moves it to the following week, which is fairly open. Do y'all have any suggestions on that?
I would like to do the 23rd if,
Or Monday
I was going to say the
21st.
21st or 23rd.
I might not be back in town.
I have a conflicting meeting on the 21st.
Okay, 23rd?
23rd.
So y'all want to do 23rd at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, what?
What about the 16th?
She's not
I
going
won't
to
be
be in.
That won't
Oh,
be
you're
here.
not going to be here, okay.
You said the 23rd.
You could do the 18th on a Friday, or, you know, if you think you, well, 23rd is what's being suggested. What I was asking for is what time? 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, what?
I can do 5 o'clock.
This is 5
5 o'clock on the 23rd?
Yeah.
Okay, so is there a motion? All right, first of all, would you include the 23rd at 5 o'clock in your motion?
So be it.
And? your
Second.
Okay. Other comments or discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, motion carries. Okay, so now that could also put off nonprofit funding distribution until we decide on the budget as well. Are y'all okay to do that? So is there a motion to table that as well?
I make a motion we table the nonprofit funding distribution.
Okay,
Second.
okay. Other comments? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Board comments. Glenn, I'll start with you tonight. Larry, I'm sorry, I'm looking.
3 quickies. Thank the staff for all the work they've done in this budget. It is 260-some pages, I think Don may have counted them. I was going to say 300. I'd like to once again, thank the staff. Number two, committed to the historic district, and I hope we can all work together and advance that and move that along, because it kind of has been worked on a long time. And I'm anxious to hear plans from the staff as far as the tree lighting, what our staff are. I know some of that hinges upon the budget, but I must have had 100 people ask me already, is there going to be a tree lighting in December? So hoping we can move ahead with that. That's it.
Thank you. Annie?
I don't have anything.
Nothing? Bevan?
Now, but what specific will we be discussing on the budget? I mean, for our work session on the 23rd?
Okay. I don't want to speak for anyone since I didn't make the motion, but my assumption is that that the budget has been scrutinized and there's still some questions about certain funding of certain projects and other items in the budget that they need clarification on. Is that a fair statement?
That's fair.
Yep, very fair.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Beverly?
That's fair.
Okay, good, thank you. Shannon?
I would like to recognize Dustin Thorne and Austin Morgan, both who were just recently promoted to senior firefighter. That's amazing. What a fabulous event to have happen in our town. I'm really excited with how the firefighters, the fire department, as well as the police department have been promoting folks and recognizing their achievements. I think that that's absolutely amazing. While I didn't approve, although at first we didn't know that, of the historic district, I want one so badly for our town. And I'm really looking forward to working with whomever needs to be worked with to make that happen. I think it's super important for our community, and I really hope that we can move forward on that in short order.
Let me add, Shannon, I think everybody feels that way. I appreciate your statement. I know that I do. But I don't think that there's anyone on this board that is against the historic district. It just needs reevaluation. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Glenn?
Just want to thank the East Wake Academy for inviting us to their graduation. It was a very nice ceremony attended by the mayor and Commissioner Clark. And we should take pride in our young folks graduating and looking for them to do great things in the future.
Thank you, sir. Okay, manager's report. Joe?
Nothing to add. I'll recognize Bobby Fitz for some budget transfers.
Bobby, that's this paper?
No, that is, last meeting, some of y'all had some questions about cemetery.
Oh, gotcha.
Comparison, so that's a little summary of that. So the budget transfers I had, in governing body, moved $1,300 from group insurance to FICA. And finance moved $2,000 from travel and training to contract services, Wake County tax collections. And administration moved $1,000 from materials and supplies IT to professional services. And planning moved $2,500 from salaries overtime, $500 of that to cell phones, $2,000 of that to vehicle maintenance. And project and property management moved $2,000 from contract services janitorial to water and sewer. Moved $2,500 from ZMC maintenance to buildings and grounds maintenance. In fire, moved $3,200 from salaries to salaries overtime. Operations moved $5,000 from salaries overtime to street lighting, and moved $1,000 from snow and ice materials to street lighting. And finally, in parks and recreation, moved $4,500 from part-time salaries, parks maintenance to contract services. All right, thank you.
Okay. You didn't have anything else to? All right, okay. Well, thank you, folks. Actually, that went a lot faster than I thought it might. So I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you.